why more of us are working later in life. Maureen, you're 82 and you're working 7 days a week. Your first job in the 1960s was a flight attendant. How were women in the workforce treated back then?
When I started, all of the crew were female. They were all hostesses. And then after I'd been there for about 12 months, they introduced male crew. And then, of course, that became a topic because the men were being paid more than we were. So we were quite upset about that. And we organised a meeting with the guy who was head of hiring, and we went into his office and he had seats like this around and he said, "OK, girls, take a seat." He had his big cigar, sort of like that, and he was quite a large gentleman. And he looked us straight in the eye and he said, "OK, who's the speaker in this group?" And one of the girls got up and he said, "Well, what's the problem, girls? Why are you here?" And she said, "Well, we're all upset because you've employed a male crew and they're earning more money than we are. And so we feel that's unfair because we're all doing the same job." And he sort of took this big suck of his cigar and then looked us straight in the eye and said, "Well, girls, I've got some news for you. Your wages are increasing, but I can tell you by looking at you that you're sitting on a fortune." And we sort of looked down at our feet and then looked up at him, and he was just so, relaxed and said, "Well, girls, nice chatting and nice meeting you. I suppose you need to get back to work."
Is that why you left the job?
No. I left the position because I became engaged about a year after that. And then, once you were married, well, you weren't hired. You had to be single in those days.
You and your husband went into the hotel business. After you divorced in the late 80s, you bought your own pub in Sydney's Balmain. What was the area like?
Well, it was very working class in those days. And I was a bit of a novelty because I was probably the first woman to be running a hotel in Balmain. I had great customers, but they were all very should I say, rough and ready, but nice guys. And the first 2 weeks, not one woman came into the hotel, and I cried myself to sleep thinking, what am I doing here? And then things settled down because they really tested me in those first few weeks.
You've been running the Royal Oak for 39 years and counting. How demanding is it physically?
It is demanding, but it's like everything in life. I think it becomes a way of life and you really don't notice it. I mean, you do get tired at the end of the day, but there's always a glass of red wine around the corner.
I guess you're on your feet all day?
Yes, you are, but if you enjoy what you do, then it's not as, I think, onerous as if you're, working and you don't enjoy what you're doing.
What do you love about it?
I love the people. I love the challenge. Every day is different. I can't say I love it every day because that'd be a lie. I mean, some days you wonder why on earth you're there, but then the next day that's behind you and you start again.
Dougal, you're nearly 70. Many people your age are retired. Why are you still working later in life?
I'm still working because I really enjoy what I do, but the deep reason is that both my parents died 1 month before mandatory retirement, and I think that scarred me as a person. It's always there. And so my father died at 59 when he was to retire at 60, and my mother died at 64 when she was to retire at 65. So all my life I've had that in the back of my mind. It's always been there. But as I approached 70, that question came into my head, and I was often asked by people, because we've been quite successful, when are you going to retire? Get a life, and I used to get quite annoyed by it all, and I'd throw a question back at them and say, well, why should I? I look after my health. I'm fit and trim and healthy, and I love what I do, so why should I retire? Look at Jimmy Barnes. He still sings. He's my age. They're not doing it for money. They're doing it because they love it, and I love what I do. So it's green lights to 70, and then I'll look at it.
You and your wife Di have been in the confectionery business for 40 years. What does that involve?
Well, it involves cooking of the confectionery and selling of the confectionery, and it's a very labour-intensive, attention to detail, and to keep an eye on the horizon, see what the changes in the market are, and developing new recipes, and I just love it.
What part do you do? What part does Di do?
I do the cooking side. I'm predominantly making the cooking and creating new recipes, and I'm a risk taker, so, you know, there's no rules to me. I just will give a go, and I find out what works and what doesn't work.
Yep.
And what do you do, Di?
I do most of the packaging and also the whole financial side, the management of the business.
So this is fudge when we're talking about confectionery.
Fudge and chocolate, we do like Rocky Road, Turkish Delight, coconut ruffs, scorched peanuts. So we do a lot of chocolate work, and then we make a brittle range, so like peanut brittle, macadamia brittle, almond brittle. So they are the three main products that our signature products.
You opened your first fudge shop in 1986. What hours were you working during that period?
7 days a week, 9 till 5, and then on weekends you would do 9 till 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then school holidays we'd do 9 till 10 o'clock at night. It's long hours.
And you were raising kids at the time?
We were raising 3 boys. We reached a point, I think, when the kids were going to primary school that we both looked at each other and said, look, I work every weekend, I work every school holidays. We're bringing up 3 sons. It's not the right game to be in when you've got children like this. I want to be part of them at football, you know, on Saturday, and we're doing on holidays. So we created a fudge making system that we marketed around Australia and New Zealand, and it still goes today.
So like a franchising?
Like a franchise, yeah. We sell them a fudge making system, and then they would add the sugar, butter and the milk that needed to bring the recipe up, and would make exactly the same fudge, but they would put their branding on it.
You went on to open another shop in 2012. How did you feel about the workload then, Di?
I was absolutely fine, but obviously the business got bigger and bigger and bigger to the stage where we had 14 staff. So 3 Christmases ago, we just worked 34 days straight, and they were 12-hour days. And my father had passed away, and we just had a brand new grandchild, our first one. And I just turned to Dougal and said, I don't want to do another Christmas. So, and he agreed. I didn't want to keep this pace up. I wanted to be a really hands-on grandmother, and my mother required a lot more care, so I wanted to spend a lot more time with her as well.
Marta, you're 93 and have been working as an interpreter and translator for more than 50 years. What do you like about your job?
For me, being an interpreter, I think it was a natural progression. I speak quite a few languages, and I love dealing with people. So putting the two together, I think that's why I do it.
You and your parents left Hungary close to the end of the Second World War.
Yes.
Where did you go?
Well, we went from Hungary, I'm Hungarian, into Austria and then into Bavaria. Next, of course, I learned German because they speak German over there. So I did learn German, but before I left, I also learned Romanian in Hungary. Learning a new language was not new to me.
What happened in 1951?
In 1951, I arrived in Australia. We were displaced, yes, after the war.
You arrived in Melbourne when you were 18. What do you remember about settling into your new country?
It was January. It was Australia Day, actually, on the 26th of January. They put us into trains, and it was hot, I remember. It was a heat that I never experienced in Germany, and neither in Hungary, actually. And they took us to Bonagilla. Bonagilla was an ex-army camp during the war. But after that, there was no longer needed for soldiers, so they put newly arrived displaced persons in there. The camp was full, so they put us into an army tent. So that's how I started life in Australia.
You spoke 3 languages, Hungarian, German and English, and you were involved in starting Australia's interpreting and translation services.
Yes.
Who needed your help?
In 1956, the Hungarian revolution broke out, and after that a lot of Hungarian refugees came to Australia. There was no community interpreter service here, so these people needed help. So I just stepped forward as an interpreter because somebody was needed to interpret for these people.
When you were 65, you lost your job. What happened?
Well, at that time, public servants, 65, we had to retire.
What did you do next?
I became a freelancer. So I was able to work for all the private and all the public services at the time, Centrelink and everywhere.
You're in your 90s, you are still working. Why is that?
I enjoy it, and I wouldn't know what to do with my mind. I wouldn't know what to do. And I know that I'm good at my job, and I'm needed. So that's why I keep working.
Jo, you spent 20 years in academia researching retirement. Should everyone work for as long as they can?
I think it's a really good question because often in social media you hear people telling you never to retire, but the reality is for a lot of people they won't get that choice. Ill health, for example, is one of the reasons why people have to leave work early. And so I think it's a very much an individual decision about when people should leave work. And I would say the better way to make the decision is to stay with work as long as it serves you well and keeps you well.
A recent survey from Melbourne University shows a steady increase in people working later. What are some of the reasons for that?
We see women staying in the workforce for longer, and the main reasons that they quote in the study, but we've heard lots of examples about purpose and identity today, but financial reasons, financial considerations, so they're trying to make sure they've got enough money to retire well. Better health, so health keeps people working for longer, obviously. Societal expectations about being able to work for longer and people expecting that you might not retire at 60 or 65 as we've seen previously. But also I think there's some issues in there about pension eligibility and probably covering off the mortgage.
John is 79 and still running the family restaurant. We joined him for the dinner service.
When I stay home, I feel very lazy and very tired. When I'm at work, I'm full of beans. Yes, sir. I will be 80 in November. Young 80. I don't see myself stopping working. I enjoy working. I don't care how many hours I do. I'm happy the way I am.
Table 2. 18 and 2. Yep. Don't shake him because I fall out of your plate.
I bought this restaurant when I was about 59 or 60, 20 years ago. From a young age, that was my dream, to own a restaurant. I work 5 days a week. I don't get tired. I haven't thought about retiring because I enjoy what I do.
Mum's a lot easier to work with. My dad's very stubborn.
It's me, my son and my wife, 3 of us cooking. My wife, she's 82 years old. She has a very good life with me. That's why she looks young and she acts young too.
Dad will never stop working. Neither will Mum. You won't let her. Terrible. We fight all day, all night. But that's how it should be, right? That way we get it done properly.
I came to Australia 1960. I was 13 years old. I couldn't speak a word of English and I started working in a cafe in the milk bar so I can learn the language.
Give me one glass, quick. One little shot. Quick.
It was hard, but I did it. Ever since then, that was my job. The food game. The doctor said to me, John, if you stop working, you're gonna kick the bucket. Keep on working. He's a customer, mind you, too. The thing is right, because a lot of people stop working and they don't last. Not that I'm scared of death, but yeah, it's better to be living than be dead. So I keep on doing what I'm doing.
Susan, you're also in your late 70s. Does John's attitude to work resonate with you?
Yes, it does.
You've had your own practice as a solicitor for more than 40 years. What keeps you in the workforce?
The statement that as you age, you become invisible carries a lot of truth. And for me, to stay working allows me to hold on to my individuality and my connection with society in general. It keeps me occupied and it keeps me doing something that I really like doing.
Your daughter Cara is also a solicitor and you asked her to join your practice 15 years ago. Why did you do that?
I needed to have somebody that I really trusted to take over the practice, and I really needed someone that I thought would look after my clients. I thought Cara would be the one that would be able to do that.
How's that gone, handing over your clients to someone else?
Well, I haven't quite managed to hand them over yet.
Oh, really?
I've stepped back, but I won't step out.
Ray, you chose to leave work early, retiring at 55. Why?
I worked with the ATO for about 36 years, and I started back in 1980, so I was in what they call a defined benefits superannuation scheme. One of the quirks of that scheme was that most of the people who were in it were leaving at age 55. So I ended up getting some financial advice about 12 months or so out from the D-Day, and I found out that the advice I received was that it would actually be financially advantageous to me to leave early.
You're 65 now. Did you always want to retire early?
No, not really. I guess as a young man or woman in your career, you might think about, oh, okay, how things are going, it'd be great to retire early. But as I sort of progressed through my career and got a bit older, I never really put a number on it or an age on it. I thought I would know when the time was right, and then the day came along and I had to deal with it.
So you went from working 5 days a week for 36 years to a sudden stop. What was that like?
I probably struggled for a while with it. I had a pretty busy job. It was sort of a bit of a challenge, I guess, for me. My wife Diane was still working, so I guess in a way I was home alone. I sort of needed to really sort of take stock and say, well, what am I going to do next?
Gary, you're 57. How does stopping work at this age sound to you?
I'm an electrician, and I've kind of worn out my body. So it sounds good to me. I've had double knee replacement, back injury, shoulders, a hernia.
So it's a very physical job.
It becomes more and more difficult to do your job. Yeah, that's a typical day at work there.
Wow.
Crawling in places. And you're just kind of crammed in like this, working with a head torch for a couple hours, and you're covered in fiberglass from the insulation. You develop kind of a bit of a cough after a while, so that's, or if it's 40 degrees outside, it's 55 in the ceiling. Well, if it takes you 15 minutes to get into position, you can only stay in there and work about another 15 before you begin to overheat. Then you have to get yourself back out. Or that job there, it was pouring down rain outside, and there's only one way into the underneath of that building. So I would have to crawl 25 meters, pull a little bit of cable or conduit in, and then back myself back out, go back outside, reposition everything, and come back inside.
You've been a tradie for nearly 3 decades, and before
Yes.
that you were a national parks guide in North America. What effect does all that physical work have on your life?
You're sort of like an antique car. It takes a lot of maintenance to keep you on the road. So you go and you get massages, you take a lot of ibuprofen, but that's really bad because then you get an ulcer, so you can't really rely on things like that.
So it sounds like you would like to stop working, but can't.
Yes. There's also the financial considerations. We still have a mortgage, and we have 3 sons that we'd like to try to help get into housing.
Katrina, you're Gary's wife. You're still working at 60. Why?
Mainly, like everyone else, I enjoy work. We need an income, but it's great to have a job that's part of our community and creates connection with other people. It's great to be able to employ people and give them the opportunity of work. I don't really think about not working, actually. I'm listening to everybody else, getting ideas.
Peter, you started as a white-collar worker doing admin. How different was it when you moved into hospitality?
Considerably. I definitely found the physicality of working in hospitality arduous. I moved from corporate work to become the tuck shop lady at my son's school. My last engagement, I was running a tuck shop on my own, providing meals for 450 kids, 4 days a week. It would involve having maybe 1 to 2 cubic metres of freight being delivered every week, always very heavy, dense produce, boxes of meat pies and sausage rolls. When they're frozen, are relatively heavy. That would have to be delivered into my kitchens, but it would mean that I would have to pack all that stock away in cold rooms and that sort of thing, packing food away. It was pretty considerable.
What effect has 20 years of heavy lifting had on your body?
I definitely have hip issues now. I had surgery a few years ago that was for an unrelated thing, but I definitely found that particular surgery took a good 12 months to overcome and get back on my feet. I could not have have had that surgery while I was still employed. I could never have afforded to take 12 months off. And if I had shortened the recovery period, I couldn't imagine that I would have been able to go back to work and been fit enough to do the job. But other than that, shoulder bursitis, arthritis in my hands, knees obviously from lots of bending, ankle injuries, and of course neck injuries from having to lean over counters constantly.
You're now 59 and you work 3 days a week. Are you still in a physical job?
I am. It's a lot less arduous, and I have younger people. I'm very fortunate to have younger staff members and volunteers around me that do a lot of the heavy lifting. But being shorter, I tend to do all of the lower cleaning and things like that. But it is a fair bit, there's still a fair bit of lifting involved. I work as a supervisor in an op shop. Lots of carrying of goods, hanging clothes constantly, tagging. There are sort of RSI issues involved with that sort of thing when you're doing the same job over and over.
You live alone.
I do.
How are you managing financially?
Very, very challenged. Despite the fact that I've worked all of my life since I was 14, I feel when I look back that while others have been building wealth, I've been building good karma, and hopefully that'll see me through and look after me in my old age. But yeah, I absolutely have to work until I'm 67 and probably beyond, particularly lately with the housing crisis being what it is. I would be homeless if I wasn't working. There's no choice for me.
What's it like when, say, a big bill comes in and car or rego and all those sorts of things? Do you have that buffer?
No, I don't, but my 93-year-old mum does. I do have a nest egg which I protect quite considerably. It hasn't done as well lately in the last few years as it had previously, but my mum has a very small nest egg and she's very, very willing to help out with the big bills. She's recently paid my car registration, which I was very, very grateful for.
Do you expect you will be able to work through to 67?
I hope so. But I think I've got at least 3 or 4 more years at the op shop before I would have to hang up my apron, so to speak. But post-retirement, once I'm able to get a pension, I think my retirement future is overseas in Asia.
Gary, your health is also telling you to slow down, but financially that's just not possible for you. What are your options?
It's often suggested that I could work at a hardware store, which a lot of tradesmen do when they retire. But the wages are about a third of my present income, and they're hesitant to give you more than 25 or 30 hours a week. So financially, with a mortgage and other obligations, we just couldn't afford for me to stop working as a tradesman.
Do you feel like you can work to pension age?
No, I don't think I can last until I'm 67 doing what I'm doing.
What do you think could be done to help blue-collar workers like you?
It would be good if we had training programs, options where people could retrain to do something else. But at the moment, the sort of jobs that we train people to do are baristas. And I'm not having a go at baristas, but there can only be so many baristas. We can't be a nation where everyone is making 2 cups of coffee per head, and that's it. I'm sorry, I'm just babbling, but I can't work 6 days a week anymore, so I've slowed down to 5, but maybe I could slow down to 3, I could work longer, but I could get partial pension or partially tap into my superannuation now. as opposed to having to wait.
Jo, should the pension rules be relaxed for blue-collar workers like Gary and Peter?
I think we've heard good arguments for making the pension relatable back to workplace longevity, but in the interim, while we're waiting for that to happen, people are trying to do workarounds. They're working part-time, or they're reducing their hours, or the work's being adjusted, or there's job redesign, and that helps to a certain extent. Financially, there may be other solutions that I'm not in a position to comment on, for example, early access to superannuation that would help solve part of the problem. But I also think that, you know, what Gary's suggesting around retraining is really important, and we often start looking at those retraining options in the face of poor health. So I'd be in favour of doing that retraining much earlier in anticipation, because we must know from the data that we've got about when people are leaving those workplaces for physical and psychological reasons.
Kiri, you're in your early 70s and have retrained a number of times. What was your first job?
I was a professional ballet dancer. I left home at 15 to become a dancer. I did that through Europe, then Australia, then I did musicals after ballet and television, and ended up at the casino up on the Gold Coast for many years, and ended up retiring at 45. And it was a rude shock, really, having to do something like give up dancing. My body just wouldn't do it anymore.
What did you end up doing after that dance career ended?
I applied for a job at Dreamworld as the entertainment director, and weirdly I got the job. I could put together shows. At the casino I was a stage manager and a choreographer and a dance captain through natural attrition because I'd been in the business that long. So moving into Dreamworld from that side of it felt like a really easy, comfortable move. The entertainment staff were really good. It became another professional genre for me. I naively moved into a corporate world.
Did you feel like you had a knowledge and skills gap moving into that corporate world?
Oh, that's an understatement. I didn't even know how to turn on a computer, and I had to do massive spreadsheets and budgets and costings for the year and costings for every production. I was a singer-dancer. I didn't do that side of the business. The producers all did that sort of thing. And I had no idea, and I was way out of my depth.
Did you come to get your head around that work?
I did, with a lot of support. I loved it. I stayed up until I was made redundant.
What was your next step?
A friend of mine worked for a white goods shop, and they needed someone to entertain their customers while they were looking after other customers. So I went in for 3 or 4 hours a day and made cups of tea and chatted with them and showed them how the appliances work. I did admin because I could already do a spreadsheet and I knew Excel, so I came in quite handy from that point of view. And then the hours increased, and then I did retail sales for a while, and then I got on really well with the builders, so I moved into the commercial side of it. And then again, it was just one of those things that I didn't know I could do, but I could do. So I stayed there 12 years and I ended up Queensland manager.
Did you then retire?
Well, yes, I did retire. But then I was bored. I sort of had nothing to do. So I did a bit of cleaning for a while, and then COVID happened. And my daughter and son-in-law are both teachers, and the school that they were both working at didn't have teacher aides because a lot of them weren't vaccinated, and you had to be vaccinated to work with students. So I was asked if I could go in and help out during COVID, and I'm still there now.
Right. So you're on your second job since supposedly retiring?
Yes, I am. Yes.
You're in your early 70s. You could have retired on a full pension at 67. Why do you continue to work later in life?
There are several reasons. The more I work, the more I realise I enjoy it. It's good for my soul. I work with students with special needs, and I feel like I'm making a difference, and not only to the students but the teachers. The teachers need support in the classrooms to be able to teach mainstream students with inclusion students in the same class. And without teacher aides, a lot of the teachers would struggle to be able to teach the curriculum they need to teach.
What's it like getting that kind of money in your bank account every fortnight or every month?
Oh, the money is absolutely critical. That is another very main reason why I do it. I have very little in superannuation. As a dancer, we didn't earn much. We lived hand to mouth. I was a single parent. So whatever I earned pretty much went out of the house. It paid the rent. And so now, that is part of my DNA, for want of a better word. I have to be earning money to feel worthwhile to myself. And I know that sounds strange. It's like I still do 4 dance classes a week. It is just what I do.
Robin, you're 73 and you have also pivoted careers. How did your work life start?
I guess for the first 3 decades of my working life, I worked for a bank and worked myself up to manager positions. Loved the work, really enjoyed every moment of it. But I got to probably my 55th year, and I sort of felt like age was impacting me. So I decided to retire at 55, which is what I did.
You were retired for 12 months. How was that?
Good, I loved it. Staying at home and family around me. So I was busy with children, grandchildren. I think I got towards the end of that 12-month period, coming up to Christmas, and I thought, okay, I've got a long way to go yet, or at least I hope I have. I need to do something else.
What did you decide to do?
So I went to university and I did a nursing degree that took me 3 years to do. And once again, it was another very enjoyable part of my life, being in that university student cohort. And at the end of that 3-year period when I graduated, I thought, okay, that's it. I've been there, done that. And I had no thoughts of really going to work because I'm thinking of my age, who's going to employ me as a nurse? But I applied for a job and got it quite easily.
This was at 60?
I would have been 60, yeah.
What was the job?
It was in a large public hospital in a geriatric rehabilitation unit. So I sort of fitted in there quite nicely.
You worked there for 4 years, then retired again.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Did you stay out of the workforce after that?
No, I was only out of the workforce for probably a few weeks when I came upon a friend who was working as a facility manager at a local nursing home, and I wasn't aware that that was her role at the time. And she said to me, "Robin, how about you come and work for us?" And I said, no, look, I don't think so. I said, and if I do, it would just be 1 day a week. She said, that's fine, that'll do. That was 10 years ago.
You're in your early 70s. Do you ever get comments about your age from staff and residents?
No, funny you should say that, because some of the residents probably are a little younger than I am. And I never get comments along the lines of, oh, aren't you too old to be working here? As a matter of fact, I do mention my age often to my work colleagues and remind them that I am that age. I'm the old one here, you need to be aware of that. And I'll stay working there until maybe someone says to me, which room is yours?
Oh, really?
It will be time to move on.
So you feel like you'll keep doing it for as long as you can?
I think so, yeah. I mean, there is a need for the sort of role I offer them.
Ray, you retired young at 55. How did you manage that transition out of the workforce?
I guess I was a bit lost at the very beginning. I felt like I needed that structure to help me through the early sort of weeks after I'd sort of left work. I'm a mad golfer, So instead of just playing on the weekends, I got to play a couple of extra times during the week. I went back to the gym. There was housework to do, but not a lot for just the two of us. And, you know, a lot of people would, especially golfers, would love to be able to do that. And I've got no misconceptions that I've been very, very fortunate in being able to have that sort of time to do those sorts of things that I love and enjoy. But at the same time, you know, there was always that emotional tug that I felt like I needed more. I felt like there was a gap that needed to be filled.
Lucas, your father struggled after he left work. Why?
My dad was an entrepreneur and a structural engineer. He had a lot of practices in Australia and throughout the world. He was constantly solving a lot of big problems and running teams, and he had a lot of structure and routine in his life. And when he retired, overnight, a lot of that seemed to disappear very quickly. We started noticing, and he started experiencing bouts of anxiety, bouts of depression, some medical issues came into the fore, and he was really struggling there for a long time, trying to figure out, who am I, what am I doing now? And he was sort of like, is this it?
Your father's experience prompted you to start a counselling service for men who've retired. What does that involve?
What we do know in Australia is that just under 4 out of 5 suicides in Australia are men, and that tells me that men aren't walking through the door and having the conversations that we need to have. So my practice is involved around movement, and one of those great places that we do work is on the golf course. So we get men out onto the golf course where we're walking and talking. We naturally get endorphins when we're moving. We have something in our hands, so it makes those conversations a lot easier to have. A lot easier than, like my dad would very much struggle sitting in an office eyeballing someone talking about feelings. But on a golf course, it's less clinical, it's a bit more natural and a bit more approachable.
What issues are men facing in general when they stop work?
So a lot of the words that I hear are lonely, isolated, bored, withdrawn. I hear anxious, depressed, invisible. I hear 9 hours of TV a day, which is like a full-time job, and just really feeling very, very lost.
How do these issues affect personal relationships?
I can use my mum for an example. She was very excited when Kevin was going to retire, but she didn't expect him around for lunch every day. And codependent relationships can really creep into retirement. And a lot of my referrals come through the intimate partners, and they report that they feel like they're being managed, that they're like an employee and everything that they're doing is being watched. So that's where that diversification of activities and getting outside the house and doing separate things is just so important, so that you have something to come back and report to.
Cheryl, your husband retired happily 3 years ago, but you're still working.
I am.
Does this have an impact on your relationship?
Yeah, he doesn't quite understand why I continue working, but I love my work and very happy to continue doing it indefinitely.
You're 65, you work
Yes.
as an executive coach. Why do you keep working?
It provides a sense of purpose, and I really love what I do. And I'm also thinking, after 40 years plus of gaining knowledge, skills, experience, I really would like to continue making a contribution, adding value, hopefully, as long as possible.
How important is it to you to sort of keep that mental stimulation?
I think it's vital. We're all aware of dementia and the risk of dementia, so if I can keep that at bay for as long as possible, then I'd like to do that. And I think work plays a large part in doing that.
Susan, you're still working at 77 as a solicitor. Do you also think about keeping your brain active?
Yes, I do. I think it's very important to keep the brain going. And I'm lucky to get that stimulation from work, backed up by crosswords, puzzle words, jigsaws, and non-fiction books that keep it going.
You handed over some of your clients to your daughter, Cara. Was it hard to relinquish that control?
Very hard, yeah, very hard, because I tended to think the clients, belonged to me and I'm the only one that could look after them.
Cara, what did you think about that?
I was okay with that, and I'm still okay with that. I see the benefits for Mum to continue working.
and, you know, keep her mind agile and active, to stay relevant, to keep earning an income. There's lots of benefits, and I think the benefits outweigh handing over the phone to me and stepping out.
Did you have to kind of define roles, I guess?
It wasn't a problem for me to, step back and let her maintain that main role.
Susan, have there been many arguments?
No, not arguments as such. Kara's a different sort of person and handles business differently to me. I'm a person that thinks, you know, you catch more bees with, more flies with honey. She has another saying.
I'm a bit more sort of, vinegar and brute force.
So we're very different in that regard.
Yeah, right. Who handles stress better, Kara, you or your mum?
Absolutely, Mum.
Really?
Yeah.
Susan, will you ever stop working and hand everything over?
Burning question. I have no answer.
Big cats have always been my greatest love. Working in the film industry and entertainment industry with animals, it always made me think here in Australia, where can they retire to? Here, have one more. And that's really how Samby started. A group of big cats that needed homes. There we go. Good lions. It's like a beautiful retirement resort for animals. I still have a few here with us. There's 2 lions, Maisie and Kiara, that were retired from the circus many years ago. They spend their days doing exactly what lying around. That's what lions do. Samby today would be home to over 100 animals. I work 7 days a week, all the time. Who wants peanuts? I don't get paid. Come on. I'm 66 years of age. So looking forward to turning 67 so I can get a pay rise at the pension. Hi. Probably should be retired. I've worked very hard my whole life, but there's no way I'm ready to retire doing what I'm doing. And to have a tiger call you their friend, to come up and chuffle and be happy to see you, wow, who wouldn't want that? When I started, I did so much of the work myself here. It was a lot of work. But then I started people putting their hands up, can we come and help? A lot of our volunteers are retirees that wanted to give back, that needed something to do and something that made them feel good.
What are we up to?
Oh, I just want to have a chat and look at what we're doing down the back.
Okay.
Yeah. One in particular, Ray. Man, he does so much. He's like my right arm guy, you know, he helps now with the landscaping and he does a lot of hard work around the place. Man, where would I be without them, hey? Nice day, Ray, the rain's gone.
Ray, lovely to see you there. You've been looking for something after retiring at 55.
Yep.
Have you found it?
Yeah, I think so. It's pretty hard not to love that. You can see what a wonderful work environment it would be with all the animals there. There's a lot of physical work that we do, but there's also a lot of planning, a lot of thinking, a lot of problem solving, which keeps the brain juices going, especially with Donna here, who will sort of say, okay, I've got an idea, I want to do this, this is what I want, and she'll come on with a tractor and dump a load of materials from a paddock that she's got and said, and make it with that. So, you know, I've got to have a bit of a head scratch and think about what we can do, and so that's sort of, all that sort of put together means that it's certainly something that I think filled the gap that I was certainly looking to fill after retirement.
Donna, there are many volunteers at the Wildlife Park. Is Ray's experience typical?
No, they're not all as great as Ray. They are all wonderful in their own ways. Ray sort of understands me, and I am a different sort of woman, and you need to understand what I want and where I'm coming from. But many of our volunteers, they've come from all walks of life. I've got retired police officers, retired people from the bank. They're from all walks of life, and they're just a wonderful people.
Do you see shifts in their personalities, I guess, when they come and volunteer with you?
Some have reached out to me and said that they're absolutely lost after retiring. They needed a purpose and something to do. And I think Sambi and the animals have really rescued many of them, especially like the retired police officers. They've come in with PTSD, and animals have a real healing quality about them. And just that closeness and being around them, it does something to your soul, to everything. They just heal you mentally and physically.
You used half your super to start the animal retreat. You still work unpaid 7 days a week. How is your health?
Okay. Well, I've worked very hard for the last 30 odd years with animals. I've had my own challenges with cancer and a few times. My knees are going. I've got a bad back because it was a lot of physical work, hard labour, what mainly men would do that I was doing. But, you know, the thing is just keep going, get up and walk. I live with purpose. Look what I do. I'm living the dream that I always wanted, and it just keeps you going.
It's been 16 years since your last holiday. Any plans to slow down or stop work soon?
Not anytime soon. Look, one day I'll have to, probably because of a health reason, but there's too much happening. We've got too much work to do. We've got new animals coming in. They need enclosures built and things.
Are the animals just animals to you, or are they more than that?
No, well, I don't have children, and they're like my children. A lot of those big cats that you see on the screen I've raised from cubs because they were rejected from their mums. They've come from zoos, and they've grown up with me, and I'm there every day for them. So that's my family.
Marta, you're 93 and you still work as an interpreter and a translator. How will you know if it's time to stop?
Well, when my mind gives up.
You must be so well known within the Hungarian community particularly. How do people in that community see you?
They just see me as a person who has been involved in the community for many, many years. They know me quite well. Some have even adopted me as their mother. So now they like me.
Jo, you've just retired from academic life. Are you planning to take it easy now?
Well, I'm only 3 months in.
Wow.
But it is definitely a case of doctor taking own medicine. I've been really busy, and I sort of felt when I retired that I had a bit of a social responsibility to share what we'd learned over the last 20 years in terms of retirement. So one of the things that I'm doing is a little bit more research, extending the stuff into purpose and identity with an ARC grant with UniSuper, but I'm also continuing on with my private practice as a psychologist, and I'm working with individuals, helping them to transition, and also organisations who are designing training materials and resources for their employees. So I'm still hoping to keep taking all of the research that we've done, translating it into practice for a long while yet.
Dougal, stopping work has been a fear for you after your parents died close to their retirement age. Have you come around to the idea?
Absolutely. When Diane said it was time to get rid of the shop, and I said I cannot do it. I said I have to go on to something. I can't just stop. That's not going to happen. So I had to take the lid off that can and come up with an idea. And I just looked at my phone about 2 days later, and there was the answer. It was a little food van. A food trailer. And I thought, now I could do that. I was in Berry Celtic Festival, all the bagpipes playing. My name's Dougal, Scottish background. I was in heaven, and I'm working.
Di, do you also enjoy working in the van?
Yes, I do. I find our life now is very, very full. We're probably just as busy. But since we've sold the shop, we've had 2 more grandchildren. So I feel like I can be really involved in their life. And yeah, it's very full, our life, and wake up every day with purpose and, yeah, love it.
Maureen, you're 82 and you're still running your pub 7 days a week. Do you take time off for anything?
Yes, I do, because I think that's important. So I have lots of other interests. For instance, I'm the president of a charity committee. We raise money for the treatment and prevention of child abuse. I'm on the local chamber I'm also love skiing, although my knees play up a bit, so I haven't for a couple of years. I love going to Europe for holidays at least once a year.
And I understand you love a bit of a punt?
Yes, I've got an interest in racehorses. I love having a bet. I love going to the races. So life's very full.
How will you know if it's time to stop work?
I say to myself when I put the key in the door of a morning, if I don't want that key to turn and walk in, I hope it never happens, but I guess for all of us, and listening to everyone's conversation and experiences, there will be a time, but who knows?
And until that time?
I'll just keep going.
Thank you so much. And thank you to you all for being here. It's been such a pleasure having you in this room. Thank you too for your company. I'll see you next time.